Welcome back to my series where I'm ranking every single episode from each Doctor's era in Doctor Who. Today we're going to be talking about the 12th Doctor, played by Peter Capaldi. Now, I think Peter Capaldi's era came at the perfect time in my life. I was 18, turning 19, so this is the age where Doctor Who's growing up and it's got a darker, edgier tone to it. And this is the type of Doctor Who that excited me. You know, especially after we had stuff like dinosaurs on a spaceship, I wanted something I could really sink my teeth into, and I thought Peter Capaldi would be someone who can do that. So I was very excited when the casting was announced. I loved Peter Capaldi in the thick of it, so this was something that was like, yes, give this to me now. Let's not waste any time and jump straight into it. First off, we have Deep Breath. This story is really, really good. And it's one of the weird moments in Doctor Who where the episode's just too long. It has great ideas. I think this is a solid 50-minute episode, and the extended runtime just dampens it. I love the setting. I love that we get to spend a lot of time in there. I love Clara's relationship with Jenny, Strax, and Fastra. I think it's interesting the type of story Stephen Moffat's trying to tell about how we deal with different doctors. Because after the end of time, where the Doctor is saying, you know, once I die, I'm a new man, the person I was is all gone. This is retroactively fixing that and saying, I know my face is different, I know I'm acting different, but I'm still the same person. I've just changed. They're trying to figure out if they're still compatible, and yes, they are. You know, but that love they have for each other is still there. Just because he looks different doesn't mean he's a completely new person. And I like that storyline. I think that's healthier for the show as well, because it's saying to the audience, no, this is still the same person you fell in love with. He's just different. I like that the Doctor is trying to question who he is and the type of person he is now, and he's got a real identity crisis. I think it pays off in the end where we find out he's still the same old Doctor. He's just a little bit grumpier this time. You know, he's gone back to his roots. You know, back to William Hartnell era, back to Colin Baker, you know, he's a little bit more tough. I thought it was interesting seeing the clockwork droids return, because they're such a great idea and it's such a great concept. So it was nice to see them get a bit of a return. Some things I wish was left behind in the Matt Smith era was the overly sexual dialogue, talking about the dinosaur being a beautiful woman. Like, what are we doing here? Like, can't we just be normal for 1 second? But overall, I don't think it's a bad start to his era, but I don't think they fully figured out what they want this show to be yet. Next up, we have Into the Dalek. This story is okay. I rewatched it recently, and there's bits I like about it, but overall, it doesn't really excite me too much. Similar to Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS, the idea of exploring the inside of a Dalek is more interesting in concept than execution. I like when the Doctor is trying to help the Dalek become a good Dalek and then discovering what a good Dalek really is. I think that's an interesting story to tell. I think this is repeating similar errors with the Colin Baker era, where sometimes the Doctor could be a bit too mean. I always laughed at the line where he's talking about how Clara cares so he doesn't have to. You know, I've always thought, oh, that's just silly and funny, but he kind of means it. So, you know, yeah. Next up is Robot of Sherwood. I am a Robot of Sherwood defender. I think it's funny. I enjoy the setting. I love Robin Hood. I love the Doctor and Robin Hood competing for Clara's attention. I like the Clara taking control. The villain, who looks so much like Anthony Ainley's Master, I kept thinking he was going to turn around and reveal himself to be the Master. I think if you're someone who doesn't enjoy like comedy, silly episodes, you're going to hate this. Compared to like how Russell does them, where he starts off the season with a comedy episode, I think it's smart doing it a few episodes in. Once we found a bit of pace and we've set up an exciting adventure for Doctor Who, I think this is the time to do a fun, lighthearted episode. Next up, we have Listen. I love this episode. I think it's so good. I love the idea of creating a monster that's not even there. Is there something lurking in the shadows? Or is it the Doctor's imagination? You know, the idea of scaring yourself is such a great idea for Doctor Who, and it's something I think only Stephen Moffat can really pull off, because you're trying to tell a story about a menace that's not even there. It's your own shadow that you're scared of. What was under that bed cover? Was there something there? Was there like some type of actual monster there, or was it just one of the kids? Because it's most likely just one of the kids, but they've invented the fear. And I think that's so good. That reveal of Clara being the one under the Doctor's bed is just brilliant. And I think this is the best dynamic Clara and Danny ever had. I love this endless failed dates and how they keep just messing it up, but they keep trying and they finally get there eventually. I know some people have issues with Danny's like descendant in the future because we all know Danny dies at the end of the season. But you know, history rewrites itself. History changes. It doesn't always work out. So I don't have a big issue with that like others do. Next up, we have Time Heist. This is another story that has all the right ingredients, but just doesn't work for me. A big reason why I don't like this story is because I think that Keely Hawes gets like criminally underused. I think she's so great, and then she's just barely in it. I think the design of the Teller is one of the greatest monster effects that Doctor Who's ever done. It looks so good. But the idea of Doctor Who doing like a heist movie just is not a genre that excites me. Next up, we have the Caretaker. What do I need to say? Annoying children, ugly robot, boring story. I think I've seen it twice and I have no interest in ever seeing it again. Next up, we've got Kill the Moon. I have only seen this story twice. The creatures on the moon look too much like spiders and spiders terrify me. So I can't watch it. I just can't watch it. So I don't really want to comment on it too much. I think it's interesting how the Doctor is like, you know, Clara, you represent Earth, you get to decide. I think it's an interesting concept in theory, but the Doctor has an emotional investment in this planet. You know, by the end of the season, he's been called President of Earth. You know, to say that he's detached is just silly. Next up is Mummy on the Orient Express. I really enjoy this one. I like that the Doctor and Clara get to dress up. I love a classic mummy design. I like the way that Stop the Clock and stuff like that all works. I think it has a real good energy to it and a great atmosphere. So I've always really enjoyed this one. I haven't watched it for a long time. I really, really want to now. Next up is Flatline. This is a story that I loved on broadcast. I've only rewatched this episode once. And that was after the first broadcast when I bought the Blu-ray. I've only ever watched it once. For some reason, whenever I try to do a Series 8 rewatch, I get up to listen and then I see the next episode is The Caretaker and I'm like, no, thank you. There's a real dive in the middle of the season. I think it starts off pretty strong and then it ends pretty strong, but that middle bit is really rough. But Flatline is one of the ones people love. They love that one. And The Boneless, is that what they're called? The Boneless? I don't even remember. I need to rewatch that one. Sorry, this tier list is getting a little bit murky, but I promise later seasons I've seen a lot more. Next up is In the Forest of the Night. This is a story that does not work in any way. It's just complete fantasy. You know, the idea of all of these like trees appearing overnight to protect the planet just doesn't work in a Doctor Who setting. It's just too fantastical that it just doesn't make any sense. And why has it never happened before or since? I think it's one of those things where the visual of London being draped in greenery is such an exciting visual that you're like, oh, let's just make it work. But then the story just doesn't work. And the ending where the sister or something is returned in a bush is just the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. What were they thinking? Flopperella, 0 out of 10, bad. Next up is Dark Water / Death in Heaven. I'm a big defender of this two-parter. I really enjoy it. I think the Cybermen are a little bit underused, but Michelle Gomez is so brilliant in it and she really shines that it's her story. I think Michelle Gomez, like I said in my third Doctor ranking episode, I think she's probably the first person to play the Master with that level of suaveness that Roger Delgado had. But she adds a little bit of zaniness that Johnson has, and it's a perfect blend of both. So I like her craziness because she grounds it with such menace and suaveness that it just works. A lot of people were very critical of the idea that after people die, their consciousness lives on. And there was a lot of uproar about that. I thought that was really haunting and chilling. But the story itself says, well, that's not what actually happens. It's because these people were uploaded to this matrix. That's not talking about real life. And also, guys, this is a piece of fiction. This is television. It's not real. We don't know what happens when people die. It's okay. So no, I don't think it's too far. I like that they were brave enough to try and say something that dark in Doctor Who. And it really spooked me. But I can understand why, you know, children watching, maybe that's a bit too far. Even in its sillier moments, you know, the Doctor like jumping out of a plane and flying into the TARDIS, like that stuff is so funny. And I just love it because it's so ridiculous. What were they thinking? For some reason, I'm really forgiving of this story because I just love the vibes. I think the bit that I was probably most offended by was the idea of the Brigadier being turned into a Cyberman and like saluting the Doctor. It's just, oh my God, that's just really grim. Because I can picture in the script it was really nice, but then, yeah, just in execution, it just comes across as really gross. Next up, we have Last Christmas. We've got our first in the best category. We finally got there. This is my favorite Christmas special. I love that it basically just did Alien. They just did Alien, but made it Doctor Who. Smart. I think this would have been the perfect departure for Clara. I think her story is really sad and really effective in this one. I feel like it sums up and wraps up her character really well. And, you know, having them both like hold the Christmas cracker together in the same way that they did in The Time of the Doctor is really beautiful, and it's a really nice callback. And I think that would have been the perfect way for her to say goodbye. But they didn't, and they kept her on. I love Clara, so I'm happy for her to stay around. But I think this would have been a nicer ending for her than what she actually got in the end. I like that this story plays with dreams and talks about how like every single week they're seeing impossible things. So Father Christmas being real actually isn't that crazy. So how can you tell the difference between real life and a dream? And that works so well within Doctor Who because of that. So yeah, love this story. So, so good. Next up is The Magician's Apprentice / The Witch's Familiar. Originally, I was going to rank this a little bit higher because I love Michelle Gomez. If she appears, it goes up. But there's so many things in this story that I really dislike. The reinterpretation of the 12th Doctor, the scene where he rocks up on a tank with a guitar, like it's just silly, but not in a good way. It's like they saw last season, they were like, okay, the audience is a bit apprehensive to this darker Doctor. We've got to make him wacky like Matt Smith. And I'm like, Peter Capaldi doesn't do wacky very well. He is a serious performer. You need to find what works for him. And I think they eventually do get it. Once we've hit series 10, they've figured out his Doctor and there's a perfect balance. But they're still not really sure what they want to do with him at this point. And you can tell. I enjoy Missy and Clara together in this. I like how awful Missy is to her. I think everything with Davros in this story is just mishandled so poorly. I'm not too mad about Davros having eyes. Whatever, sure. But then you've also got the Doctor taking him out of his travel unit and driving around and calling it Dodgems, because the idea of knocking someone out of their wheelchair and driving around in it is disgusting. And I think that's when people were starting to talk about maybe the interpretation of Davros that we're seeing is not what we should be telling. And maybe that's why when he comes back in Destination Skaro, he isn't using his travel unit anymore. I don't know. I think it's a really serious conversation to have, and I don't know exactly what the answer is. But I think it's fair to say they took it a bit too far in this story. I think it's nice that they tried to make up for Asylum of the Daleks and said, I know we said every Dalek ever and we didn't deliver. This time we're going to do it correctly. They did a good job at it, but it doesn't really add anything apart from a bit of fan service. I think Skaro looks brilliant. I think they did a great job with that. So yeah, there's elements of the story that I enjoy, but overall I have a lot of problems with it at its core. It's foundational problems that I can't really overlook. Next up is Under the Lake / Before the Flood. I don't really enjoy much about this story, so I put it in the not for me category. I prefer Under the Lake over Before the Flood. Do I? No, I don't like any of this. I don't mind the design of like the ghosts and the design of the big, tall, scary man. Yeah, there's not really much about this I really like. Except for the beautiful man. He's really beautiful to look at. But if I wanted to look at beautiful men, I'd just open Instagram or something. Like, come on now. The Doctor's cue cards are funny. Girl, I'm grasping at straws. I haven't got much nice to say about this one, sorry. Next up is The Girl Who Died / The Woman Who Lived. I have absolutely nothing nice to say about this one either. I don't think Maisie Williams was the person to play this role. I don't think she was cast correctly. It feels like they were like, she's on Game of Thrones, she's a name, let's cast her. And it feels like she didn't get an audition because this character is just so miscast. And I just don't find her believable at all. I don't like the setting, I don't like the story, I don't care for it. Next. Next up is a Zyon Invasion / a Zyon Inversion. I like a lot about this two-parter. I felt like the Zygons were used a lot better in this than they were in The Day of the Doctor. I like that it's a sequel to The Day of the Doctor as well. You know, it's carrying on because their story wasn't finished yet. So I like that. And I like Unit and Kate and Osgood together. I think the famous speech is good, but I think it's a bit overhyped. But I do enjoy this story. I love Clara getting to play someone evil. I like evil Clara. And I like the story of saying, with the two Osgoods, like one of them's a human Osgood, the other one is Zyon Osgood, but they're still a person. They're still the same person, you know. So I like what they're trying to say there. It's like, don't try and judge me for who I am, because I am me. I'm a complete person. And I like that. I think that's an interesting way of looking at the Zygons. Next up is Sleep No More. I can admire that they tried to do a found footage style episode of Doctor Who, but they did this at a point where that style of filmmaking was so outdated by the time this came out. You know, like Paranormal Activity and all that, and like the Blair Witch Project, that just feels like they were innovative for the time, and this feels like so derivative. And I don't really feel like it uses the format in a way that's really effective. I don't think it's very scary. The idea of the Doctor leaving at the end being like, I don't know how to fix this. Like, okay. I don't think that works for Doctor Who. It's like, out of all the menaces, this is the one you can't fix. A bunch of sand people. I don't know. I don't love this story. You know, maybe if Mark Gatiss got to make his sequel and they were combined and it gave it a more satisfactory ending, maybe I would have enjoyed it. But this one wasn't for me. Next up, we have Face the Raven. I like elements of the story. I love the idea of the setting, but the actual execution of that set of the alleyway just looks so cheap. It feels like I'm at a theme park. It's not a believable space. As you can tell by now, I'm not really a big fan of this season. I think this is Capaldi's weakest. But I promise, once we get to his final season, those ratings are going to go a lot higher, I promise. Next up, we have Heavenscent. Best of the best. Wow, what an incredible episode of Doctor Who. I think this is one of those episodes where every single part of it works. I think the direction is brilliant. I think the performances are brilliant. I think the set design is brilliant. The music is incredible. I think it's Murray Gold's best, by far. There is something about this one that just, every single element of it is just perfect to me. Because this is a story that could feel really repetitive, like Groundhog Day vibes, because we're repeating the same moments over and over again. But the actual repeating is what makes it so powerful and so brilliant. So this is really peak Doctor Who for me. The whole analogy of talking about the bird in the mountain, and I love it. And Peter Capaldi really believes it. Because the thing is, if the Doctor's going to go back to Gallifrey, he's going to have to work hard for it. Like, he destroyed his body over and over again for thousands and thousands of years to get back. And it feels so earned. After all this time talking about the Time War, bringing back Gallifrey, and finally he gets to go back. And that's why I feel like Hellbent, when we're going to come up to that in a moment, is not loved by people, because the journey to get there was so big, and then the story they tell afterwards feels so small. So yeah, maybe let's just move on to Hellbent. So next up is Hellbent. This story, to me, is a good story, but once you're following on from Heavenscent, it's really hard to beat it. I think this is one of those story arcs, you know, where we're talking about the hybrid and how it's more cerebral than your typical Doctor Who story arc. In the early episodes, I was talking about Dalek, Cyberman hybrid. You know, that's a typical Doctor Who story arc. But when we're talking about the Doctor and Clara's relationship being the hybrid, that's something that I think not all Doctor Who fans are really going to enjoy. Clara trying to become the Doctor and how she can't be the Doctor is something that's implied anyway throughout the series, that's the story. I don't think I necessarily need it to be the main story arc. I think that was like their character story arc, but then there should have been a different story arc for the entire series. In the way that I think it would have been received better by fans if they did it that way. But I enjoy what they were trying to do, and I think it works for me. The idea of Clara running off with me, though, sounds horrific. If I had to be stuck in a TARDIS with Maisie Williams, I think I would just self-destruct. I don't think I would want to stay in that room for very long. Those two together make no sense at all. It's so weird. But overall, I actually enjoy Hellbent. I love a lot of elements and stuff they're doing on Gallifrey, and how the Doctor's back and he's ready to be like, no, you're doing what I say because you've messed it up. And I like that. And I like that he kicks Rassilon off the planet and stuff like that. It works for me. And it's sad that they couldn't get Timothy Dalton back as Rassilon, because I think That storyline might have worked better if it had the same face. But yeah, ultimately, Series 9 is a bit of a flop for me. It's not my favourite. There is some good stuff in there. I just don't love how the 12th Doctor has been reworked. But once we get to the end of the season, he's kind of at the point where I like him to be, where he's a bit darker, he's a bit more straight to the point, because that's what Peter Capaldi does well. He does not do playing a guitar on a tank well. I'm sorry, he just doesn't. Next up is the Husbands of Riverong. Now, this story is something else. Is it a good story? No. Is Riversong in it? Yes. So where does that put me? It puts me in the okay category. I am not a Nardole fan. I hate to say it. I wish I was. I wish I enjoyed him like other people do, but I just don't find him funny or interesting. I don't think he's a real character. I think this is one of those stories you have to be a little bit tipsy for on Christmas Day to really enjoy. This is not a sober viewing of Doctor Who, and I don't really drink that much, so this story doesn't really come up for me very often, let's just say that. I like how the Doctor and Riversong's storyline gets wrapped up here. I think it's a good departure for her character-wise, and I like that they get to spend their final days together for a lot longer. That one night on Darillium that lasts for many, many years, I think is beautiful. I think that's so nice. It's a beautiful way of rewriting it. Next up is the Return of Dr Mysterio. This is easily one of the roughest moments as being a Doctor Who fan for me. You know, we just had a gap year, and you know, we just had Husbands of Riverong, then we had Class, and then we had this, and I was like, oh my God, I don't like any of this stuff. How did we go from Heavenscent, like one of my favorite Doctor Who stories of all time, to just a whole bunch of stories that I don't enjoy? This is during the time where I kind of stepped away from fandom. You know, this is when I was like, I'm not really a Doctor Who fan anymore. I really just didn't enjoy this. And it took a really long time to get back to where I am now, where I fall in love with the program and I love it again. And I was really worried that my time with Doctor Who was over, that I had outgrown the show. So when I think about this episode, there's no good thoughts about it. I don't like any of it. And so I don't really love talking about it too much, to be honest, because I don't like being that negative on this channel, really, because it's just not very nice to talk about. I love talking about Doctor Who with you guys, and I love having positive stories to say about Doctor Who. I like being critical of the show because it's important to be critical of things you love, but I don't like to be like, I hate this. That's not a nice feeling for anyone. Next up, we have the pilot. This was really the make or break for me if I wanted to be a Doctor Who fan still. And this episode motivated me. I felt like the Doctor was finally being written in a way that I really enjoyed. The idea of him being this professor just really spoke to me. And Series 10, as you're about to see in this tier ranking, is, I think the individual episodes aren't the best episodes of Doctor Who all time, but the actual series itself and the vibe and the tone and the characters are like top tier. So when I'm ranking the pilot as just good, I think all the elements and setting up the season as a whole are brilliant, but the actual storyline is something that I'm like, Bill's girlfriend, her storyline doesn't excite me too much. But I love all the stuff with Missy, obviously Missy in the vault. Like everyone knew it was going to be her in there. Like it wasn't really like a big surprise. And I really love Bill. I instantly gravitated towards her character. There's something about her that I just really like. So yeah, I think the pilot was a good start. Not the best start of all time, but it was a good start. Next up, we have Smile. I really love the location of this one. I think it looks beautiful. I think it's one of the really nice looking episodes of Doctor Who. I remember when the initial images came out with the emoji bots and I thought, oh, this is a little bit cringe. But I think they actually work within the episode. I think they're actually quite cute. I always like when Doctor Who does an episode about like a far future colony where something has just gone wrong. And so this one kind of like scratches that itch for me. So I do enjoy watching this one, but it's not like my favorite episode of all time. It's just a good staple episode of Doctor Who. Next up is Thin Ice. This story, I want to like it more than I do. I think the actual setting is really beautiful, but the way it's either shot or the visual effects just makes it look really bland. Like it could have been like a really magical place and setting, but it just doesn't look that great to me. I don't know what it is. I can't pinpoint why it doesn't look nice, but it just doesn't to me. I do like the Doctor punching a racist. I think that's funny, especially after being like, oh no, we have to be better. We can't do this, can't do that. And then instantly the Doctor is just like, I can't do this. I think that's funny. I do think something that does look good. It's all the stuff under the Thames where, it's the frozen lake and, in the suits and stuff like that and the big monster thing. I think that looks good. But yeah, overall, the story is just a bit forgettable for me. Next up is Knock Knock. There's a lot of this story that I really enjoy. I love the vibe of it. I think it's really spooky and scary. I like the wooden daughter and stuff like that. I think it's such a beautiful design. It's so well done. And I like the story it's trying to tell. But the conclusion just doesn't really work for me too much. But I did enjoy all the roommates and seeing that part of Bill's life. Next up, we have Oxygen. Thank God, I've finally done another best of the best. This is one of my favorite Peter Capaldi stories. I like its political messaging and I like how scary it is. It makes space feel terrifying. Because throughout Doctor Who, space travel seems really exciting and fun and let's go everywhere, how brilliant would that be? And then this story really brings you back to Earth and says, no, if you go out there, you will die. It is so dangerous and it's really, really scary. And the political messaging of having to pay for air because capitalism has gone that insane is just a scary reality where of course they do that. It's you see people all over the world who can't afford healthcare. It's just oh my God, there's no caring for anyone on this planet. So why wouldn't they charge for air in the far distant future on this space station? It's disgusting. And how it's all a tax write-off. It's disgusting. It's so awful. And it's just a really great story. This is the type of Doctor Who I love, where it's scary, it's got something to say, and the setting is brilliant. It's top tier Doctor Who for me, for sure. Next up, we have Extremist. During this tier list series, I've been putting 3-parters together and 2-parters together. But for this one, I'm going to do them individually because I feel so different about each individual story. I think Extremist is one of the best of the best. I really enjoy the story. The vibes of it are immaculate. Just the concept of knowledge being so dangerous and so life-threatening is really chilling. And the build up to it is really oh my God. And the reveal of why people are doing this pays off. And it's oh my God. It's a chilling episode. I cannot talk about how much I love this episode enough. I love some of the more magical settings, going to the Vatican and all the stuff under the Vatican and all of these mysterious documents. I think the monks are a great design and they look really scary and creepy. I love that we're continuing the storyline of the Doctor being blind, even though they kind of work around it with using the sonic glasses and stuff like that. But it still works for me because the moments where he can't see and the danger he's been put in is really interesting and fun to watch. But yeah, I think it's something that I loved about Last Christmas where we're not sure what is reality, what is truth, because within Doctor Who, everything is so crazy. So why wouldn't this be real? And I think it's great that Doctor Who does the whole, what if we were living in a simulation? And how would people react to that? I think that's really, really powerful. Because how would people react if we realized that all of this was fake? That's chilling. That is really, really scary. Next up is the Pyramid at the End of the World. Any story to follow up the last one is going to struggle. But I think this story really suffers from Doctor Who's budget. I don't think it can pull off Army. It doesn't look good. It looks really, really cheap. And I just don't find it very believable. The one part I do like about this story is how they think that these monks are going to destroy the planet, but we don't know how. But really, humanity is destroying itself. I think that's a great storyline. I think all that stuff works, which is why I put it in the okay category, because I love all that stuff. But everything else is a bit inconsequential to me. Next up is The Lie of the Land. The problem with this story is I feel like it doesn't wrap up the monk trilogy that well. I think one of the worst bits is where the Doctor pretends to regenerate and stuff like that. It's just a bit cruel. He's just not treating Bill very nicely. I think it's probably just a step too far. And once again, it's the whole love saves the day type of vibe to the ending. And I just really don't resonate with that type of stuff very well because I'm heartless apparently. I have no soul. I'm a Doctor Who fan. I don't have feelings. Next up is the Empress of Mars. I've always enjoyed this story compared to others. Most people don't seem to like this one. But I think the Ice Warriors are done well in it. I think they feel threatening. And once again, Mark Gatiss can't help himself. Even if he's setting a story on another planet, on Mars, He still has to fit in his little English Anglophile stuff in there. He can't help himself. But I think that adds a nice element to the story. And I enjoy that weird fight that it's on Mars. And I think the opening segment in NASA is so crazy and so weird that I just kind of vibe with it. And having a random Alpha Centauri cameo at the end, yeah, I'm all for it. It works for me. Next up is the Eaters of Light. This story does absolutely nothing for me. One of my friends was doing a full watch of Doctor Who, and he said to me that this was his favourite episode of the season. So I cut all ties with this friend, obviously. No, I don't get what they even saw in it, but may 1,000 blossoms bloom, baby. May 1,000 blossoms bloom, but it's not for me, Diva. It's not for me. Next up is World Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls. Now this is Doctor Who. This is a recurring theme in the Capaldi era, where there's episodes where the lead actors should have left. Clara should have left in Last Christmas, and Peter Capaldi should have left in The Doctor Falls. It would have worked so much better, but it didn't work out that way, baby. It did not work out that way. I love that we got to see a new interpretation of the genesis of the Cybermen, who have been given so many genesis at this point. You've got two big finishes where they get their genesis, and you get this one, and then you've got the Cybermen two-parter from series 2. So you get a lot of genesis for them. And this episode even comments on it, they make a reference to it. And even in comics and stuff like that with the genesis of the Cybermen, it's silly. But I think the vibes of this one is immaculate. Well, once again, Missy and the Master take over the story. It stops being a Cyberman story as soon as that first episode ends. It goes straight into, it's about them. And they're brilliant. And they're so great. You're not even mad about it because them two together are just electric. And I feel like John Simm's performance in this as the Master is better than his first go. I enjoy him more in this. And I think it's a really great departure from Michelle Gomez, even though I would love to see her return every single week. I want her just as the main character of the show. Get rid of the Doctor, just bring in Michelle Gomez and I'm happy. I think she's so great. I enjoy the story talking about Bill becoming a Cyberman and how awful that is and how horrific it is. And how long she stays downstairs with the Master, with the Cybermen, and how it's a slow journey for her, and how the two time periods and how they add up. I think that's beautiful. I think that's so well done. And it's once again Stephen Moffat looking at weird science fiction and science reality, things that happen with time, and trying to make it work in a Doctor Who space. And the whole timey-wimey thing, he does it best. I think this story once again proves that the original Cybermen design is excellent. They are so creepy. And we're going back to what makes the Cybermen creepy. It's the conversion. It's the body horror. It's the surgeries. That's what's disgusting about the Cybermen. That's the thing that makes your skin crawl. And that's what it does well. And that's why I have an issue with the second part. Because the second part, they're just robots. They're just shooting at people. And I just don't think the second part, all the stuff about them defending that little farmyard, none of that really works for me. I don't care about that stuff. But as a whole, I think it works. And it sucks that that wasn't his regeneration episode because you can see that moment where the Doctor is in that field and he's looking up and he's saying, I wish there were stars. That would have been the most beautiful departure line for any Doctor ever. That's so upsetting. And last off, we have Twice Upon a Time. Now, I am in two minds about this story. I don't love how they wrote the first Doctor. I don't think it's very accurate to his character. I think David Bradley does a really good job though. I think he looks so much like Bill Hartnell and he really embodies the character. Even if he takes like 5 hours to say a sentence compared to Bill. But, I still think he does an amazing job. My biggest issue with this story is that when I think about it, I think about the first Doctor coming back and how much I didn't like it, rather than this being Peter Capaldi's final story. I felt like the spotlight wasn't really on him in this story, but that could just be me because I'm a First Doctor fan. I care so much about the First Doctor. But then again, I'm a massive 12th Doctor fan, so make it make sense. Make it make sense. Stephen Moffat's original plan was to end at the end of the last season, and because he thought Chris Chibnall would take the Christmas slot to do Jodie's first episode, and he decided not to. He didn't want to take him up on that offer. So this episode was really a filler. It was an extra, and it feels like it. This doesn't really feel like a Stephen Moffat last hurrah. It feels like an extra. And that's the problem with this one. I could talk for hours about why I didn't like this episode, but I just don't want to end this on a sour note because I really did love Peter Capaldi's Era. But once again, it was about the vibes. It was about the overall feeling. It was about his Doctor and his relationship with his companions that made it work. And this is something about Doctor Who as a whole. You know, even if the story's a bit meh, the Doctor and the companion in it is what makes it brilliant. And I would say that about this era. The 12th Doctor is really, really great. I just don't think his stories are probably the most exciting. So that's the 12th Doctor era. What do you think about my ranking? Do you agree with it? I'm really sad to see so much of it on the lower end. Everything's so middle of the road. You know, I'm not very happy with how this tier list has looked, but it's an honest one. You know, and I'm not here to say, oh, I loved every single episode because, you know, what's the point of that? Let me know in the comment section below. Tell me how wrong I am. And next time we'll be talking about the 13th Doctor era played by Jodie Whittaker. Oh my God, I think I'm losing my voice. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Josh Nares YouTube channel.